Dear friends, it is Monday Chapel time. This is Pastor Lucas from Cokesbury, UMC. And every Monday we post the sermon we preached yesterday in the worship service. And yesterday we began a new worship series, a new sermon series called The Epic of Eden, based on the book with the same name. And it's basically a journey through the Old Testament so we can make sense of the Bible. And to see the connection between the Old Testament and the New Testament. You know, many people these days, they've been trying to find a disconnect between them. And they understand that God is different in the Old Testament than it is in the New Testament. And we're trying to investigate that. And I want to invite you to this journey with us, okay? I do believe it was a blessing yesterday, and I'm sure it's going to be a blessing in the next following Sundays as well. So check it out. But I do recognize that all of us, we see the Old Testament as something disconnect from Jesus. Many of us see God from the Old Testament as a different God from the New Testament. We have a hard time reconciling all those stories because, let's face it, the Old Testament has a lot of stories involving wars and bloodshed and stuff like that, that it doesn't sound like Jesus at all. So trying to clarify some aspects of the Bible so that we see the connection between the Old and New Testament is really important so that we can actually have a better understanding of who Christ is and what God's plan is to our lives. And that's my attempt. Hopefully, I'll be able to help in this process. Just think like this. For many of us, the Old Testament looks like a closet, like our closet, let's face it. Look at me. Your closet is not organized, is it? It is not. None of us have. In fact, I was surprised when I went back there to get my microphone on, and I opened this jacket, and look what I found here. I was trying to find this for a while at home. I had to get this from another place, and it was right here. You know, when you go out and $20. I forgot about that. That's what I'm talking about. We all know the stories of the Old Testament, but sometimes we cannot connect them. Why? Because one of the reasons I mentioned to the kids, we tend to project our world now, 21st century, to stories that are happening 5,000 years ago. Not going to happen. It's different, right? So sometimes we get lost because of those elements. Another element is really culture. The culture of the Old Testament is quite different from ours. And it is important to try to understand some of the key values of those cultures so that we can make sense of why things were happening the way they did. And the other temptation we have usually when we talk about, when we come into the Bible, we many of us, maybe you are holier than most of us and you don't do that, but most of us, we bring our culture to the Bible, and we actually praise our culture in a way that it seems like it's the only one that is right and does things right. We call this canonizing culture. And the other side of it is when we over-canonize the Israelis' culture. And we see everything we do as wrong, we should do like them. And I'll just say it, maybe not. There are some things you don't want to do, right? I'll just mention one case that is really hard for me to grasp and understand. Do you remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? Remember when people of that area went to the priest's house and they're knocking, they wanted to get the angel? What the priest does? Do you remember? Offers his own daughter to be raped by several men. Not sure about you. I'm sure I will never do that. right? So, but we need to read those things in perspective. So that's my attempt today, okay? So it will be a little bit like Bible study flavor and a little bit of sermon flavor, okay? So the first aspect of it, my first attempt here today is to help us understand that the story of the Bible is the story of redemption. This is the core value of the Bible, from Genesis to Revelations. Okay? And as we dive into the Bible study side of it, step by step, we'll understand that. Okay? But again, it's important for us to understand some features of culture. And I'll begin with ours. Okay? So imagine this picture. I'm driving my car on the highway, and you are with me. And then we see the police car behind me, and the lights go flashing, and then we hear, woo! What am I supposed to do? Stop, right? And should I stop and leave my car and wave? No, I should be in the car, get my window down, put my hands on the wheels. In the US, in Brazil, nah, doesn't care, doesn't matter. Okay, so we do that, and I wait. What the police officer should do? Approach me and ask for? Why? Because he wants to make sure I am a person related and validated by the state. And if I am, I'll be okay. If I'm not, uh-oh, right? And why do we know this? Because this is a manual. It has to be like that. Why? Because we are a bureaucratic society. Big word for me to say that. I don't know how to spell that. Every time I need to type it and say, bureaucratic society. We have laws, we have manuals, we have documents, we have procedures. And that's how we operate. Israel, the Bible, they are tribal. They are a tribal society, a traditional society. The state doesn't matter much. The law doesn't matter much. What matters is the family. The family is more important than the state. They didn't have a state. Okay? So, we call this it's kind of, anyway, I'll say, it's a patriarchal society. What that means is that the oldest man in the family is the person making the decisions about everything. If his son commits a crime, he's not going to be arrested by the police because they didn't have police. He's not going to be judged by a judge. They didn't have a judge. They will come and say, hey, your son did something wrong. What are you going to do about it? And he had to do something about it. Because if he didn't, his brothers would do something about it. The uncles had the responsibility to do something about it. And if they didn't, then the community would do something about it. And let's be honest, to get to that point, it means that what they would do with that person, it was not nice. Okay, if you read Genesis 38, the story of Judah and Tamar, you will understand what I'm talking about. And if I had time, I would preach about it, but I won't. I just want you to know that the man of the family, the oldest man, he would decide what their sons would work with, who they would marry. The family was Medicaid, unemployment, Social Security, all together. They would be the police, okay? They had a commitment to protect each other. So in the tribal society of Israel, you would have the cord. In Hebrew is betab, okay? The family household. Is that a familiar word for you who read the Bible? Do we find that word a lot in the Bible? Household? Yes. You see here? That's the unit. That's the most important. It's not like my house. My house is myself, my wife, and my daughter. No. A family in Israel, 15 to 30 people. Okay? Again, patriarch and his wife, all his male sons, redundant, all his sons with their wives and with their children. And if he was wealthy, all servants, all living in a compound together. That we have a fancy word for that. It's patrilocal, same place. They would live in the same place under the patriarch, under the oldest male. Okay? And the other aspect of that unit is that we call it, another fancy word is patrilineal, which means everything that matters in terms of descendants and inheritance is connected to the male of the family. And that is why we have these weird laws in the Bible that says that the oldest man, when he's married, the oldest son, he gets married, and then if he passes away, his wife has to marry his brother. Why? To keep the lineage alive, because she would be the second wife of his brother, but their first son would be the deceased son, because he would inherit everything that belonged to him, because that was the deal. If my father was the patriarch, and we have 4 men in my family, my oldest brother would keep 50% of the inheritance. The other 50 would be split by the 3 of us. And why I'm saying this, because when you read the Bible, especially the Old Testament, you see some family confusions and fights, and they're surrounded in that area. Inheritance, who is who. When you read about Ruth, that's the matter. Okay? And that's, I'm talking about men a lot, right? So let's talk about women. Unfortunately, women in that society, they would have 3 roles, basically, in their lives. They would be the daughter of someone, then the wife of someone else, and then the mother of someone else. The value of women in the tribal society was related to the man in their life. So, with that being said, for those of us who hear a lot, a phrase that as a pastor, I hear a lot, and say, Pastor, I'm concerned about some stuff that is happening, and I just want to obey the Bible and follow the Bible. Do I need to ask? First of all, let's begin with the nice one. You have your children and grandchildren. Do you want all of them living in your house? Right? And another aspect that is really important, and that's my really what I care here about. When we read the Bible, when we read about widows and orphans in the Bible, now you might understand why there's such a weight on them and why it's so important to care for them. Because without a family in that context, you were nothing. You had no security, you had no food, you had no protection, you had no land, you had anything. Anything. Because everything was about your family and your family connections. So just if you're curious, probably you're not, but I am, because I like it, right? So just in case, just to clarify, so that's what you should think about. You have the family unit, the betab, the family household. And then the extended family, all the cousins and, all the uncles together, it's the clan. We all know this concept. And then a group of clans, they are what? The tribe. And then the collective of tribes is the nation. Okay, that's why we say that Israel had how many tribes? 12 tribes. So again, you see the cultural difference? If we really want to be proud of following the family model or whatever model in the Bible, we should adopt the tribe model. Of course not. I'm just, joking here. But if you think like that, maybe the Cherokee and the Native Americans, they are closer to the Bible model than we are. Okay? And that's okay, by the way. Just in case you're wondering, I hope you're not. That's okay. But my point is this, about this. We need to be aware of the differences that exist between our society and the Bible societies. Because we adopt things from the Bible and we left some others away from us, right? We don't adopt some. Why? Because we are able, thanks God, to interpret the Bible and understand that some things should not apply to us now. So again, and then it's confusing because we need to go and dive into matters that do matter still to us now. And that's why I said in the beginning that the conduit of the Bible is redemption. Okay? So why it's important to understand all this context, small context and specificities of the Bible, is to understand that God is so awesome and so great and so loving that He, even though He's sovereign and majestic and wonderful, He makes Himself smaller so we can be able to understand Him a little bit. Because if God comes to us the way He is, we will not understand. We cannot, right? I think I repeat that phrase every Sunday. God's love is unconditional, and we don't accept that. Did you notice that when you read something, I love this person, it's followed by because. I love my mom because she's nice with me when I'm 5 years old. I love my grandpa because he gives me toys. I love this person because I love my wife because she's pretty. And because. You don't hear saying, I love this person just because I do. And that's the challenge that we have, to love one another just because we love, and that's it. That's enough. We tend to believe that I love this person because that person agrees with me, and no. I love you because I do, and that's it. You make me angry. Yes, you do. But I love you anyway. You see? That's the challenge. That's the challenge for us. So why should we care about all this patriarchal, patrilineal, and something else that I'm talking about? Just because when we know this, and then we read something like what I'm going to read now to you, just listen to it. If you want, you can close your eyes, but just try to listen. Jesus is saying to his disciples, in John 14, he says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. In my Father's household are many rooms. And if it were not so, I would have told you. And I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am." You know, this household of God, our patriarch, the one who decides what we will do in our lives, the one who guides us every day, the one who protects us every single day, even from ourselves sometimes, the one who is willing to put all his resources at risk to rescue and to redeem us. That's the God we call Father. That's the God who is preparing a place for us with him. And I'll extend that. I'll be bold enough. I'm not rewriting the Bible. But he's preparing us a place for you and for me here in this world, so that we can not only know him more, experience more of his grace and love, but also that we'll be able to share with others that love and care. Because that's the call God has for each one of us. God calls you daughter. God calls you son. And not for no reason, we read the Apostle Paul writing to the Romans and saying that we will inherit the kingdom of God, that we are adopted brothers and sisters of Christ. He has half of the inheritance. We will share the other half, and that will be more than enough for me and for you. God's Word wants to teach us about our relationship with God, and it should be a safe relationship, because God's goal is to redeem us. That's what he wants to do. And I invite you to read at home the prodigal son story once again. And maybe, I'm hoping, the way you understand that parable will change or be enhanced, because now you know that the Father has the legal responsibility to care, to protect, and to support his sons. And what that kid did was to abandon all that, to say, I don't want any protection. I don't want to belong to this society. I don't want to belong to this family. I don't need you. That's what he was saying. But his father, instead of casting him away, he waited to restore, to redeem that person, and to restore his place as a loved and beloved son. God, our Father, our Savior, our Redeemer, is a God of redemption from Genesis to Revelation, and for that I praise his name.